If there's any group of people in America who deserve to suffer, it's the white middle class. It's the people who have been warned for decades about where this country is headed, but who were too short-sighted, too timid, and above all, too greedy, too selfish to do anything about it. During the 1960s, when blacks were rioting and burning our cities, middle-class whites refused to take a strong stand against them because that would disrupt the country even more and would be bad for business. Instead, they tried to appease the blacks with all sorts of new civil rights laws and other government programs. They tried to buy them off. The whites just wanted to continue indulging themselves. They didn't want to do anything that might require a bit of austerity in return for the long-term improvement of the country. In the 1970s, when the real push was on to racially integrate the country through forced busing and forced housing and forced employment laws, and many white working-class people were demonstrating in the streets against this forced racial integration, the comfortable middle class, which was not being as adversely affected as the blue-collar class, refused to become involved. The white lawyers and doctors and accountants and professors and engineers and small businessmen just looked the other way and kept on stuffing their faces. Their kids weren't being bused to black schools. Their employment wasn't being threatened by affirmative action. They certainly weren't going to jeopardize their own comfort and security and respectability just because of what was happening to working-class white kids and working-class white parents. Of course, many middle-class whites were concerned about the degenerative trends which were all too obvious in America during the 1960s and 1970s. They just weren't concerned enough to do anything. Their solution was just to vote Republican and keep making as much money as possible so that they could insulate themselves and their own immediate families from what was happening around them, and to hell with everyone else. And so we had the Reagan era, and the white middle class thought that their strategy of compromise and appeasement and selfishness had worked. Well, of course, it hadn't worked. Such strategies never work in the long run. People who will not fight eventually will be eaten